Hey, my name's Elizabeth, and this is Museum Greg Reads, or at least that's what I'm going with for right now. It's my first ever YouTube video, and we're a work in progress over here. So because this is my first ever YouTube video in the Booktube community, or anywhere else for that matter, I figured a great way to start would be to go with the Booktube newbie tag from circa 2020. I'm late to the game, per usual. So bear with me and we'll get into it. So first question is, why did you start this channel? And I think the easiest answer for that is actually that I joined the Booktube community really in 2021 and found everybody to be really lovely. This is a warm and welcoming and really friendly community that I was excited to be a part of, even from a spectator angle from it. But because it was so warm and welcoming, I thought, you know what, maybe I can be brave and enter into this fray without feeling too much imposter syndrome or feeling like there's not space for me, even though it's YouTube, there's space for everyone. But really, that's the reason. It looked like fun. Everybody was really lovely. And I thought, why not? Life is short, give it a try. So question 2, what are some fun and unique things that you can bring to YouTube? You know what, we'll see. I'm not sure that it'll be entirely unique because there's nothing new under the sun. That's something that I've learned over the years. But why not try and see if there's something that I can bring? I am weird and I collect a lot of strange life hobbies over my 37 years on this planet. So at least there's that. A lot of non sequiturs, a lot of really weird, useless information that exists in this noggin and will come out whenever I deem appropriate, which is not necessarily when the rest of the world wants to know it. So stay tuned for unique trivia that you didn't ask for. What are you most excited about for your channel? And really just putting myself out there. This is a scary thing. I've been part of the Booktube community and interacting with folks and really dipping my toe in the water for over a year, but I haven't thought, you know what, I'm brave enough to do this. So number 4, why do you love reading? I'm an only child who grew up in the middle of nowhere. There were less than 3,000 people in my town growing up. I was one of 58 in my graduating class, and that was the largest graduating class that town had seen to date. So needless to say, there weren't a lot of kids around. I grew up with acreage, so we didn't have a ton of neighbors like you would have in a suburban neighborhood. So I spent a lot of time just alone or with my parents. Didn't have cable, didn't have satellite, so I had books. But I also didn't have a library easily accessible. We had to drive more than 45 minutes to get to the nearest bookstore. So I read a lot of things that weren't necessarily in my age demographic. So I was reading a lot of classics at a very early age because they were on my parents' shelves, and just stretching myself and reading what was there really helped open up my mind, I think, a lot to what could be in my reading journey from an early age. Also, I'm old enough that there wasn't a lot of YA in existence. That wasn't really a genre that had made it into the popular zeitgeist at that point. So once you kind of graduated from the Boxcar Children and the Babysitters Club, you didn't have a lot of other places to go. For me, reading was a place where I could be entertained, where I could be kept company. When I didn't have a lot of people around, it gave me people. Which sounds really depressing when you say it out loud, but was actually a really lovely form of escapism that has stuck with me through all the years. So, yay. Question number 5, what book series got you into reading? And I don't remember a time in my life before reading, so I'm not sure that there's really an answer for that. But I can say earliest book series that I remember just adoring and devouring, couldn't get enough of, was really sad when I realized I'd read everything already, was probably the Berenstain Bears, going way back. I also deeply loved Babysitter's Club. I was exactly the right age for that, and the Boxcar Children. But like I said earlier, YA was not a real big genre when I was a teenager, or even sort of entering into that reading level, I should say. And we didn't have a lot of options. So really the things that I remember capturing my heart and making me cry and moving me and making me see the world through a different lens were classics. I'll tell one story that my best friend claims is the most Elizabeth story to ever exist. And in my little tiny rural town in Texas, little ranching town, the school called my mother one day because I was inconsolable on the playground in the 4th grade. So again, I'm maybe 9 at this point, 4th grade. Yeah, maybe 9. But I'm inconsolable on the playground and they can't figure out what happened. No one hurt me. I didn't fall. I wasn't fighting with anyone. So she goes over to the school, tries to figure it out, gets me calmed down. And finally, I was able to explain, once I had calmed down a bit, that I had just finished reading The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo, that I had swiped off of their shelves in a complete works of Victor Hugo monstrosity book. And I was so upset by how sad that ending was that I was just inconsolably crying on the playground. So I think really classics were the place where I became moved by books, not just entertained, but moved by books. What questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? How did you just start doing this and not feel incredibly awkward, really silly, terrified? How do that help? What challenges will be the hardest with Booktube? Really just continuing to put myself out there, doing this until it doesn't feel weird. I'm not sure if it'll ever not feel weird, but we'll try. Let's see what we can do. But I think really there are phases in my life that get really busy. I work as a consultant in the nonprofit sphere, and so I can have a month where life is pretty normal, or I can have a month where I am doing event after event or major meetings, and I'm working way more than a 40-hour work week, and anything kind of in between. So regularity is going to be, I think, a really tricky thing for me, and kind of, especially at this beginning phase where I'm going to have to kind of force myself to sit down and talk to my phone and pretend like there are people here and that you're on the other side. Hi, to the one person who's probably going to watch this. But that, I think, is going to be the hard part for me, is just getting started and forcing myself to find a rhythm and to find comfort in doing this. Number 8, when did you start reading? And like I said, I don't know a time before reading, but I do know that grad school kind of killed reading for me for a while. Grad school, just, you're reading constantly, and writing constantly, and it took all of my attention, and my thesis especially just took all of my attention. And with a brief 2-week period where I shut down and did nothing but play Tetris and read the entirety of Twilight, I don't know that I did any real reading for fun during those 2 years. And even after, I think for a while after, I was still just not connecting with literature and with reading as a hobby. I think I was scarred maybe a little bit from it. So it took me a little while to get back into the groove, for a couple of years. And then the pandemic hit, and the first 8 months of the pandemic, could not read. could not read a single word and process it. It was a really hard year for me mentally. And while it seems like reading would be a great escape, the brain fog that I felt just would not allow me to. It was a lot of Animal Crossing and YouTube. But thankfully, we were able to reconnect, and I think I've probably read more in 2022 than I did in the entirety of the 4 years leading up to it. So we could say it's probably back with a vengeance. But there's definitely been times in my life where there's been breaks. Number 9, where do you read? Kind of everywhere. All over my house. I have a hammock that I'll put up when the weather is really nice in the backyard, and I love doing that. I love reading in the bath. I actually remodeled the bathroom here at my house specifically because I wanted to be able to have a really lovely bath bomb, bubble bath, reading, glass of wine evening. But honestly, my all-time favorite place to read has gotta be at the beach. Like, give me the sunshine, the sounds of the ocean. My soul is restored by water, and add a book into the mix and everything's golden. The only issue is that I burn in less than 10 minutes, so I gotta have a lot of shade and a lot of sunscreen. But that's probably my happiest place, would be reading at the beach. What genres of books do you read? So everything. I do read a little bit of everything. If it interests me, if I'm curious about it, I'm gonna pick it up, whether that be nonfiction, literary fiction, fantasy, romance, whatever the case may be. But I think that the biggest genre that I tend to read is kind of staring us in the face. I am definitely a sci-fi girly. I have been a sci-fi girly since the cradle, probably. My parents' first date was actually to see a really underrated science fiction movie called Enemy Mine, starring Dennis Quaid and Lou Gossett Jr. You probably have never heard of it. I say look it up. It's really worth the watch, even if it is science fiction from the 80s without all of the bells and whistles of all of the CGI, but it's an amazing movie. I grew up on a healthy dose of Star Trek, and my personal favorite, Stargate. It's just a great show if you haven't watched it. I'm not sure that it aged well in terms of the visual effects. It was the late 90s and early 2000s. Please forgive it. Although all of that stuff's coming back, so maybe you'll like the costumes and the really bad CGI. I've loved reading science fiction from probably 4th, 5th grade again. I think that's when I was really, leaving the Babysitter's Club behind me and moving into the big parts of Barnes and Noble to find whatever struck my fancy. I think the first science fiction series that I just really devoured was the 2001 A Space Odyssey series by Arthur C. Clarke. The movie is atrocious. The books are amazing. Anything by Ray Bradbury, but especially Martian Chronicles. And then moving into modern era, I mean, there's so much to devour, but my personal favorites are definitely space set adventures. I love first encounters. First contact stories are really my sweet spot. I love found family, but really I love to experience anything except dystopian is kind of my least favorite part of the sci-fi genre. When it pops up, I tend to avoid it unless it's really good, like the Silo series by Hugh Howey. Ate that up, but probably wouldn't have picked it up, except I didn't have a book with me on a plane one day, and there was a sci-fi book at an airport bookstore that was just called Wool, and as a fiber artist, I felt very drawn to that particular moment and just went with it with no additional information, so I'm glad I did that. But really, I do tend to stay away from the more dystopian parts of the genre. I could continue to talk about that for way too long, but I'll probably do some of my more recent sci-fi favorites in another video, so stay tuned for that because I have a lot of them. I had a really great science fiction year last year, and I can't stop talking about at least a half a dozen titles from the 30 some odd science fiction books that I read last year. So maybe that'll be my next video, or maybe I'll do a TBR, but I'll probably already be into February and already be reading books. But thank you if you've made it this far. Bless you, actually, if you made it this far. I appreciate you. Thank you for sticking with me and for listening to me ramble about myself, which I don't like to do. So hopefully you'll see me sometime in the future. We'll meet again. Don't know where, don't know when. But you can click that subscribe button below and be notified whenever I do upload my next video. If you at all enjoyed watching me fumble talking about myself, you can click the like button and make me feel like I'm not talking alone in a room to my phone. I'd appreciate it. Seriously, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!